I never thought that dinner would become the moment that tore our family apart. The oak dining table I had chosen for my son's wedding now sat in the middle of the softly lit kitchen. On it were the salad I had mixed myself, the grilled fish David had loved since childhood, and the scent of freshly baked bread. Everything looked perfect, at least on the surface. Emily, my daughter-in-law, sat quietly across the table, her eyes slightly swollen as if she had been crying. David kept his head down, eating without meeting my gaze. The air was thick, heavy. I could hear every clink of knife against plate. Trying to break the silence, I forced a smile. I marinated the fish a little longer today. It might be saltier than usual. Do you two like it? No answer. Emily only nodded faintly, her lips trembling. I was about to speak again when David put down his fork, his voice low and rough. Mom, maybe it's time you went back to your own place. I froze. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. What did you say, David? He didn't look at me. He just sighed, staring at the table. I just think it's not convenient for you to stay here anymore. Emily and I need some privacy. I hope you understand. The room seemed to stop breathing. The wall clock's tick-tock echoed like mockery. I turned toward Emily, and in that instant, something unexpected happened. She burst into tears. Her voice broke between sobs. Don't say that, please. I don't want Mom to leave. I just feel guilty because I don't know how to make her feel comfortable here. I'm afraid she thinks I'm cold. I stared at my daughter-in-law, tears streaming down her face, and my heart twisted painfully. I wasn't angry, nor resentful, only deeply, quietly tired. I had believed that moving in with my son would bring back the warmth of a real home, laughter, shared meals, the sound of family. But now, all of it vanished with one sentence. I stood up, my hands trembling, and whispered, It's all right, I understand. I'll go. Let this dinner be our goodbye. No one spoke. Only Emily's muffled sobs and David's uneasy stare filled the silence. I turned away, forcing my steps to stay steady, even as my heart felt crushed inside my chest. That night, I realized, nothing feels colder than being asked to leave the very place you once called home. But what haunted me most wasn't his words. It was her tears. Because in them, I saw something deeper, a fear, an apology, and perhaps a secret I had yet to uncover. Before we continue, take a deep breath with me. Family isn't always easy. Sometimes the ones we love most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever been through something similar. Every voice matters, because every heart carries its own family drama story. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 3 years before that fateful dinner, my life was quiet, perhaps too quiet. At the time, I was still living alone in the small house my late husband left behind, a place filled with memories, silence, and the soft scent of lavender drifting through the air. That's where it all began. 3 years before that fateful dinner, my life drifted quietly in a small house on the outskirts of Charlotte. That house was left to me by my late husband, a 2-bedroom home with a porch overlooking the lavender garden he had tended for 15 years. Since the day he passed, I had rarely left it. Everything inside remained the same: the sweater he hung behind the door, the coffee cup he used every morning, and the faded wedding photo on the wall. During the day, I often sat by the window, watching neighbors walk their dogs and children playing ball across the lawn. Everything seemed ordinary, yet the loneliness was suffocating. The house was so silent that I could hear the clock ticking, reminding me that time was still moving, only there was no one left to tell about it. One day, David came to visit. He hugged me and said, "Mom, why do you stay here all by yourself? Emily and I just bought a new house. The living room is huge. Come live with us, so I can take care of you when you're sick." I hesitated, knowing that young couples need their privacy. But his eyes were so sincere. Emily took my hand gently and said, "I want you to come too, Mom. The house will feel warmer with you in it." So I agreed, partly because I missed my son, and partly because I believed that cooking for him every day, hearing a grandchild's laughter, would bring joy back into my life. I sold my old house and moved in with them. At first, everything was truly happy. I woke up early to make breakfast, planted flowers in the backyard, and went grocery shopping with Emily in the afternoons. She was sweet, Polite, always asking for my opinion before making decisions. David smiled more often. I thought perhaps God had taken pity on me and given me a second home. But things began to change after the baby arrived. Emily grew tired, more irritable, while David was constantly at work. I tried to help, taking care of the baby, cooking, doing laundry, but the more I helped, the heavier the atmosphere became. Once, I made stew that was a little too salty. Emily said softly, "Mom, the doctor told me to avoid salt. Please remember next time." I apologized right away, but in her eyes I saw something, not anger, but exhaustion. Gradually, our conversations faded. I heard them whispering behind closed doors, then silence. Dinner for 3 became a strained ritual. I still tried to smile, to tell old stories, but David kept scrolling on his phone, and Emily just nodded politely. One evening I overheard them arguing in the living room. Emily's voice trembled. "I don't want to hurt Mom, but I feel like a stranger in my own home." David replied quietly, his words muffled, but I understood. My presence was weighing on their marriage. That night I sat on the sofa, holding a cold cup of tea, my heart heavy. I wondered if I had made a mistake by moving in. All I wanted was to be close to my son, to help, to feel a little warmth of family again. But sometimes, love, even a mother's love, can become a burden when there's no room left for it. I didn't know then that this feeling would soon lead to a moment I would never forget: the dinner, when my son told me I should go back home, and my daughter-in-law burst into tears before I even had the chance to. The months after my grandson was born were filled with the sound of his laughter and cries, yet somewhere between those sounds, long, uneasy silences began to settle in. At first, I didn't notice. I told myself everything was fine, that Emily was just tired from sleepless nights, and David was simply busy with work. I tried to help as much as I could, washing towels, changing diapers, rocking the baby to sleep. Every time he smiled, warmth flooded my heart. It felt as though life had given me one more reason to stay. But then came the looks, those fleeting, quiet glances that made me feel no longer welcome. One afternoon, I overheard Emily talking on the phone in the kitchen. "I'm okay, really. It's just, sometimes I feel suffocated. His mom means well, but I feel like I'm not myself anymore." I froze behind the door, my heart sinking. She wasn't speaking badly of me, but every word pierced like a tiny needle. That night, when David came home, they talked for a long time in the living room. I caught fragments of their voices. "She only wants to help," David said softly. "I know," Emily replied, "but I need space, David. The house is small, the baby cries all night, and I can't rest. I'm so tired." Her voice cracked on that last word, tired. I didn't go in. I was afraid that if they saw me, it would only make things worse. From that day on, I started to pull back. I ate faster, spent more time in my room, cooked less, and avoided cleaning when they were home. But somehow, the more I withdrew, the farther apart we grew. One morning, I came to make coffee and saw Emily had already poured 2 cups, one for her, one for David. I smiled gently. "Oh, looks like I get a day off today?" She smiled faintly. "I didn't want you to wake up too early and get tired, Mom." Her tone was kind, but I could hear the hesitation beneath it. I began to feel like a guest in my own son's house. Every little thing I did made me wonder, am I in the way? Even when I held the baby, Emily would watch closely, as if afraid I might do something wrong. I knew it wasn't mistrust, just a new mother's instinct, but still, it hurt. One night, when the baby had a fever, I carried him to Emily's room. She rushed over, her voice trembling with worry. "Mom, why didn't you wake me up? He's my son. I should be the one taking care of him." "Why?" I stayed quiet, whispering only, "I'm sorry, dear. I was just worried." But I couldn't sleep that night. I kept asking myself, since when did love become a mistake? After that, David began to change too. He spoke less, smiled less, and often avoided me. I could see him caught between 2 women, the mother who raised him and the wife he loved, and I knew the one suffering most was him. I once believed that if I sacrificed enough, everything would stay peaceful. But perhaps, sometimes, the presence of an aging mother, no matter how full of love, can make the small world of 2 young people feel unbearably crowded. The cracks in that house didn't come from arguments. They came from silence. And in those long, quiet days, I could feel it. Something was slowly breaking apart, even if none of us had the courage to say it aloud. That night, I remember every detail. It was a Friday evening at the end of March. A light drizzle tapped on the porch roof, the wind brushed softly through the kitchen window, and inside that house, I was cooking David's favorite dish, caramelized fish simmered with ginger and pepper. The aroma filled the air, blending with the scent of warm rice, bringing a fleeting comfort to the lonely walls. I wanted the evening to be peaceful. I wore a beige wool dress, tied my hair neatly, and set the table with the porcelain set Emily once said was as pretty as something from a magazine. I even made a small bowl of vanilla pudding, my grandson's favorite dessert. All I wished for was something simple, to sit together, to laugh, to share one warm meal like we used to. When David and Emily came down the stairs, I smiled softly. "Tonight I made your favorite, David." He nodded, without looking at me. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. We sat down. 3 people, 1 long table, and miles of silence between us. The clinking of silverware against plates sounded painfully loud. No one spoke. Trying to break the tension, I said gently, "The fish might be a bit salty tonight, but I think you'll still like it, just like before, right?" David put down his chopsticks and took a deep breath. There was something in his eyes, weariness, hesitation, sorrow. "Mom," he said quietly but firmly, "I think maybe it's time for you to go back to your own place." I froze. The world around me stopped moving. All I could hear was my heart pounding hard against my chest. "What did you say, David?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked down, avoiding my eyes. "Emily and we just need a little space. You know how small the house is. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I hope you understand." I said nothing. Those words, uncomfortable, cut deep. It's the kind of word people use when they want you gone, but don't want to feel guilty. I turned to Emily. She sat still, her hands clasped tightly, eyes glistening with tears. Then suddenly, she broke down. "Don't say that, please. Mom hasn't done anything wrong. I just feel guilty because I don't know how to make her feel at home." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. And in that moment, I understood, leaving doesn't always mean losing. Sometimes, leaving is how we keep our dignity, how we give those we love the chance to recognize the value of what they once took for granted. I don't know if David thinks of me now, but I believe that one day, when his house feels a little too quiet, he'll finally understand there are dinners that should never end with the words, "Please leave." 3 weeks passed since that rainy night. "Please don't go, Mom, I'm begging you." I smiled faintly, my heart hollow. I didn't want her to carry the weight of guilt. I stood and began to clear the dishes slowly. Outside, the rain grew heavier, each drop tapping against the window like the echo of my heartbeat. No one saw me to the door. There was only the sound of Emily's muffled sobs and David's distant, empty stare. The same son I once held through fevers and sleepless nights, the one I thought would never be capable of hurting me, couldn't even meet my eyes. That night, as I stepped out of that house, I realized some wounds bleed without being touched. And sometimes, a person doesn't have to shout to send you away. A quiet, "You should go home," is enough to make an entire heart collapse. I carried my small suitcase down the stairs. The quiet rumble of the wheels against the wooden floor echoed softly, like the faint sound of my own heart breaking. Emily stood by the kitchen door, her tears not yet dry, her hands clutching the edge of her blouse. "Mom, please don't go," she said, her voice trembling. I turned slightly, forcing a gentle smile. "Don't cry, dear. I'm not angry with anyone. I just think maybe it's time for you two to have your own space. Everyone has to learn to stand on their own someday." Then I walked out, without looking back. I knew that if I turned around, I wouldn't have the strength to keep walking. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. I pulled my coat tighter, feeling the chill seep into my shoulders. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, casting the lonely shadow of an old woman pulling her suitcase away from a house once filled with laughter. A taxi stopped by the gate. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Going far, ma'am?" I whispered, "Not far, just going home." Those 2 words, going home, stung like a blade. The house I thought I'd left behind forever was now the only place left to return to. As the taxi pulled away from the neighborhood, I looked back through the window. The warm light from David's window still glowed, a faint golden ribbon tying me to a memory. Through the rain, I saw Emily's silhouette by the window, unmoving, as if waiting for a miracle that might make me turn back. But miracles don't exist in real life. There are only people who learn to hide their pain behind silence. When I arrived at my old home, I opened the door. The scent of aged wood and time embraced me. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The crooked wedding photo on the wall, the wooden chair where my husband used to read the paper, and the forgotten teacup on the window ledge. I sat in that chair, listening to the rain tapping softly on the porch. Beside me was the suitcase. Inside, just a few clothes and a photo from last year. Me, David, Emily, and the baby, all of us smiling. I touched the photo gently and whispered, "My son, I'm not angry. I'm just sad. Sad that love somehow became too heavy to carry." That night, I couldn't sleep. I brewed a cup of ginger tea and watched the streetlight glow faintly through the old curtains. The stillness was so deep I could hear the clock ticking 1 second at a time. For the first time in years, I truly felt what loneliness meant. Yet beneath that loneliness, I also realized I was still alive, still free, still capable of beginning again. The next morning, I opened the window. Soft sunlight touched my wrinkled hands, warm, gentle. In the small garden outside, the lavender was rising again after the rain. Perhaps I, too, must learn to rise like that. I spent the day cleaning the house, planting new flowers. By afternoon, my neighbor came by, surprised to see me back. I smiled and said softly, "I just came home." As night fell, I sat on the porch, sipping tea, listening to the hum of crickets. David kept his head down, eating without meeting my gaze. The air was thick, heavy. I could hear every clink of knife against plate. Trying to break the silence, I forced a smile. "I marinated the fish a little longer today. It might be saltier than usual. Do you two like it?" No answer. Emily only nodded faintly, her lips trembling. I was about to speak again when David put down his fork, his voice low and rough. "Mom, maybe it's time you went back to your own place." I froze. The old house was brighter now, yet inside me there remained an empty space that refused to fade. Each morning, I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the wooden chair near the window, watching sunlight filter through the lavender my husband once planted. Everything was peaceful, so peaceful that it hurt. I hadn't heard from David. No calls, no messages. Sometimes I picked up the phone, ready to dial his number, but my fingers froze. And just like that, all the pain, all the anger seemed to dissolve into the night air. The next day, David and Emily returned. I cooked a simple meal, caramelized fish, vegetable soup, white rice, and a little vanilla pudding for the baby. When the three of us sat down together, laughter slowly filled the kitchen again. Not the loud, carefree laughter of the past, but a softer kind, born from healing, from forgiveness, from finding each other again after the storm. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything." For a moment I froze. Then slowly, I placed my hand on her shoulder. "Come in, dear. I'll make some tea." We sat across from each other in the small kitchen. The steam from the tea filled the air with a soft scent of ginger. Emily kept her head down, eyes red, pulling a folded envelope from her coat pocket. "I wrote this a few days ago," she said softly, "but it took me this long to bring it here. I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid you wouldn't want to see me again." I slid the teacup toward her and said gently, "I don't hate you, dear, but I was hurt. I just didn't understand why things had to go that far." She nodded and handed me the letter. Her voice trembled as I began to read. "Dear Mom, I know I hurt you. I know that night, when you stood up from the dinner table, your heart must have shattered. But Mom, I never wanted you to leave. I was just afraid. Afraid that one day I wouldn't be good enough for you to love. That I wouldn't be strong enough to protect this family the way you once did. I was scared of disappointing you." A few weeks before everything happened, I was diagnosed with mild postpartum depression. I didn't tell David because I didn't want him to worry. I couldn't sleep, I was irritable, and I felt useless. Sometimes, when I heard you singing to the baby, I cried because you did everything better than I could. I was jealous of your calm, your kindness, your strength, and instead of saying it, I stayed silent. That silence broke everything. I never told David about my depression until after you left. He was devastated. We fought a lot. He blamed me for hurting you. but I told him the truth. It wasn't your fault, Mom, it was mine, because I wasn't brave enough to speak about my fears. I'm so sorry, truly. If you'll let me, I'd love to come here every week to learn how to cook the caramelized fish that David loves. I want to fix what's broken with all the love I still have left. Asterisk, asterisk. My hands trembled as I folded the letter. My throat ached, and for a moment, words refused to come. Finally, I reached across the table, laid my hand on hers, and whispered, "You don't need to apologize anymore. I understand. Sometimes we hurt each other not out of hatred, but out of fear of losing one another." She broke down again, resting her head on my shoulder, crying like a child. I stroked her hair gently and whispered, "You are still my daughter-in-law. This home will always be open, for you and for David." In that moment, I felt something inside me melt, not anger, but release. Perhaps forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it does bring peace to the heart. Before leaving, Emily turned at the door. "David's coming soon," she said softly. "He wants to tell you something he's been keeping to himself." I stood in silence, watching her walk away through the garden gate. The evening breeze stirred the lavender, carrying that familiar scent through the air. And in that golden light, I knew a new door was opening. Not just for me, but for our family. That night, after Emily left, I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. 2 teacups still rested on the table, one still warm, the other gone cold. I watched the thin trail of steam fade into the air. It looked exactly like what I felt inside, fragile, uncertain, slowly disappearing. Then came a knock at the door. I stood up, walked over, and froze. It was David. He looked thinner, his beard unshaven, his shirt wrinkled. His eyes were filled with worry and regret, the kind that comes from not knowing where to begin. Before I could speak, he stepped forward and knelt before me. "Mom, I'm sorry." Just 3 words. Yet they tightened every string in my heart. I bent down and placed my hands on his shoulders. "Get up, David. You don't need to kneel. Just speak from your heart. That's all I ever need." His voice broke as he said, "I regret it so much, Mom." That day, I was weak. I was afraid. Afraid of the tension, the arguments, of losing my marriage. And so, I chose the easiest way, by asking you to leave. But when you walked out that door, I realized, without you, that house wasn't a home anymore. I stayed silent as tears slipped from my eyes, falling onto his hands, warm and trembling. "You know, David," I whispered, "when you were little and you fell, I always told you, it's okay. Get up, you're stronger than you think." But maybe, as you grew up, I forgot to remind myself of that too. I forgot that sometimes, a mother must let her child fall, so he can learn what truly matters. David looked up, his eyes full of remorse. "Mom, please come back home with us. Emily told me everything. I know it was my fault. I promise, I'll never let you feel alone again." "Halber." I gazed into his eyes, those same eyes that once held every hope of my youth. "My son," I said softly, smiling, "I don't need your promise. I just need you to understand, family isn't a place to run from when life gets hard. It's where we return, no matter how much it hurts." He nodded, and we embraced a long, trembling embrace. Outside, the evening wind brushed through the lavender, carrying its gentle scent. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. We sat down. 3 people, 1 long table, and miles of silence between us. The clinking of silverware against plates sounded painfully loud. No one spoke. Trying to break the tension, I said gently, "The fish might be a bit salty tonight, but I think you'll still like it. Just like before, right?" David put down his chopsticks and took a deep breath. "I'm afraid she thinks I'm cold, but the truth is, I'm just so scared of hurting anyone." David said nothing. His hands trembled, then clenched into fists. No one at that table wanted to hurt anyone, but once words are spoken, they can never be taken back. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "It's all right. I understand. I'll go. Let this dinner be our farewell." Emily lifted her tear-streaked face. "Family is where we may lose our way, but it's also where we can always find our way back." The last light of day streamed through the window, wrapping 3 generations in a soft golden glow. I smiled, breathing in the scent of lavender, and whispered to myself, "In the end, home is still the place where someone waits for you, even after you've walked away." Thank you for listening to my family drama story today. If you believe that every wound can be healed through love and forgiveness, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more touching family drama stories every day. Here, every family drama story speaks straight to the heart because it's told with kindness, pain, and hope.